So YouTube has PEDA, which is vlogging every day in April. I decided to take it a little different and do a podcast every day in April. Yeah, I know it's August, but the last letter starts with an A. So we're doing a podcast every day in August. Tune in. You might like what you hear. This is the Past Podcast. So for future reference, I think I need to get a post-it note package and just keep it right here so I can know what episode we're on. Because I almost called this the wrong episode. This is episode 95 of the Past Podcast. This is your host, or I am your host, BT. Here to do yet another episode. I was unsure. Like I said, I have a queue or a list of topics. I'll kind of be a little all over the place. This, if that makes sense, this time period, but I do have a good queue of topics, and I'll be blending some more in as time progresses. As I always share, the podcasts are being recorded using the Blue Yeti microphone, and I also do upload these episodes daily. Well, for this month, daily on Spreaker.com, and if you want to check that out, it's Spreaker.com/Brate Podcast. I have been getting a better consistent flow with adding some things. One of my newest, I guess you can say, creations or enhancements is finally getting some Pinterest attention, because I didn't realize Pinterest is kind of I almost want to say the undercover social media that no one really uses. And I'll elaborate a little bit on social media later on, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. So I did want to just mention that as a option. I did add a new feature, so to any of my Pinterest folks who do want to go back and keep track of blogs or keep track of information, I do have the option where you can pin the actual blog itself or pin the images from the blog or from my podcast page. And I'm sorry, I'll say this because it has been reminded to me, so I want to make sure I address it with you all. I do have a tendency to call my webpage a blog because it has a blog format to it. So if I get those mixed up, don't hold it to my head, not my heart. It's just me trying to still get a true feel for the page flow. But that 2-minute spiel is not why I am posting this morning's topic. Today, I actually, since I've had the program now, we're about 7 months in. I initially put 6 months in my book because at the time that was when I had talked about it. But as of December, around Christmas time last year, I did give the infamous the infamous Apple Music a whirl. And now, since I've used it for a while, I kind of want to give a bit of an overview about it. And at first, and I'll say this before I continue, when first using it, I only use it for the basic bare minimum. The bare minimum for me was, with the paid version, was the Beats One playlist and the actual playlist that I created, that I had before, that I never could really access. So now I'm able to kind of give, now since I've used it for a while and really been able to look into it, I've found a lot of quirks and a lot of things that I enjoy and value heavily with using Apple Music. First and foremost, the obvious, of course, is actual albums. There's pretty much few to no albums that you have access to with Apple Music. Now, I'm going to say this, and this is an honest personal assessment. If you're a Apple person, as in you have a Mac, you have an iPhone, you have an iPad, even down to an iPod Touch, if you're using those features or you're using those devices and you have Apple Music, I would personally suggest it, and I'll tell you exactly why. When it comes to what anyone who knows or understands Apple understands the regime behind the Mac life, everything kind of is uniform to one another. Meaning, if you play the playlist or you save the playlist on one device, it goes across all of your devices, and that's even without the iCloud feature for Apple. This is strictly iTunes based, because iTunes, the subscription that you have is used across all of your devices as long as you're under that login. Now, to make things fair, to kind of put it into perspective, I've only actually paid for a month of service so far, if I recall correctly. And how that worked was, I purchased I was provided a 3-month complimentary card, which I used that with no problem. Then, of course, with that card, there were apps that I was downloading or little tidbits of points to try to get through different levels of games, so that kind of was affected. But I eventually did get another 3-month subscription with a pair of headphones that I purchased that are not fully working right now, but it's not the end of the world. But I do have those factors that's kind of been what's coasted me through with having my Apple Music be the guide or the tell-all be-all. So I'm sharing this with you all and just saying those are like just kind of the small intangibles of looking at Apple Music. The obvious, which is to download, well, not download, but to listen to just about any artist you want to at any point. One of my secret features that I just got introduced to is called For You, which means each day or each morning, Apple Music decides, hey, this is some music that you seem to be listening to or that you may have an interest in. So I'm going to share these albums. I'm going to share these artists with you. I also have the ability to show you these are some other some other things that you may or may not be aware of, that some other songs to listen to. So right now I have there was an 80s playlist that I found, and it went from every direction to Donna Summers, Upside Down, You Turning Me, to Prince, to Michael Jackson, to Madonna. It was quite a good, a decent playlist. So a lot of times those are good flows, are good listens to get me going while I'm still trying to implement getting some podcast listens in. Hopefully I'll bring that story to light as well, about something that I've been trying to do or looking to get into doing, which is speed listening, and I've talked about that before. But that's not what this podcast is about. This one is about predominantly listening to music and how much music I've kind of consumed in my stream flow. Most times, an immediate listen for me usually is Beats One. I don't listen to many of the interview-based sections of Beats One. I do like different artists, such as when anytime Q-Tip is talking, I definitely tune in, because he has a strong knowledge base when it comes to music. Obviously, Pharrell, I've listened to his interviews a while back. Over the time span of me having the option to listen to these out playlists, I've been able to listen to a lot of artists a little earlier than normal, which is, I ain't gonna say, well, let me not say earlier than normal. I've been able to listen to albums as they're released. So of course, Drake's album, when that finally dropped, that was an interesting day because there was a lot of delay. There was a mixture of delay and suspense behind that album being dropped, but it at some point did make it. So that was a huge, I guess you can call it a breakthrough in so many words. Everyone has been on the Jay-Z album. I've talked about this in one of my podcasts a while back, and I never realized, or you never realize in general, how much an album or a song can have on people until you really see the media, as I call it, come full circle. And this circumstance was no exception. He, in the song about, OJ, Song of OJ or whatever, there was a lot of attention brought to things that he was bringing up, how he's, you know, it's like he hasn't forgotten, but it's, well, he's telling everybody about this and this, that, and the third. But it's a matter of, if you're taking it personal, then that means that maybe you just need to reevaluate what and how you're doing things, and that's what I've been doing personally. But that's not. I know I'm kind of sidebarring or sidetracking a little bit, but I do want to be the first to admit that I've gotten a better knack or a better feel for music since having Apple Music. I can pretty much plug in my beats or turn on my beats and just kind of have a chill sesh to kind of get away for a little bit. And most of my friends who know me know music is kind of my sanity outlet, if that makes sense. So with me having that opportunity or that moment to just kind of give a spin to an artist or to an album, it helps out a lot. So that's kind of been what has made listening to Apple Music a lot more transparent, I guess. And also one feature that they do have, and I'm kind of segueing a little bit, but like I said, so the list that I have now that I'm listening to is best of 80s club hits. So they played Diana Ross. I did mention Madonna, so I was right about that. My bad. Super Freak. It Takes Two. And it's crazy because you look at a lot of these songs like Rob Bass. A lot of these songs you forget were from the 80s because you would assume they were 90s songs, but they weren't. And I mean, it's a brief playlist, but still it's enough music to kind of get you going for the day or for that moment. And today, they recommended. Now, mind you, the playlists that they recommend are based on what you listen to. So if you pick certain songs, it's really going to kind of blend based on that. So today's options I have are hip hop R&B hits from '83, Palm Trees and Bad Bitches by Bryson Tiller. So that's likely a playlist that Bryson Tiller made himself. Class of 2015 hip hop and R&B, urban throwback, it's reinventing the remix, and hip hop and R&B hits from 2012. And then they'll kind of give you the turnaround of what has been in heavy rotation, like albums that you've listened to. One day I found a playlist of, at the top of the page, if I'm not mistaken, they'll usually have I found a new music mix, and it was mainly new artists or up and coming artists that it's like, hey, let's see who this is. I've never heard of them. Kind of check them out, see what they're all about. So I've taken that on, and that was helpful because, as most of you do recall, a couple of episodes ago I was in Baltimore, so I needed music to get there, which was helpful in more ways than a few. And of course, I needed music coming back, so having some music to kind of just jam out to and relax, and kind of just keep a fluid flow was very, very, very helpful. So I don't deny or disregard that one bit. But overall, I personally enjoy Apple Music. I don't. If you were to ask me, do I prefer Spotify? Do I prefer Apple Music? I don't really have a preference, because I'll be honest in telling anyone, when it comes to listening or when it comes to music, I was usually the owner of most music. I didn't really do the streaming. Streaming for me, of course, was Pandora. And for most of you, I tell this story a lot of times. My old school streaming was Yahoo Music. So I would do Yahoo Music and play their playlists, and that was kind of my thing at one time. Now it's like I said, I have Pandora. I was initially looking at doing Pandora Plus. Pros and cons kind of didn't really weigh in my favor. So I went to, Apple Music just kind of happened to be the option at the moment. I've looked at Spotify. I see Spotify. Don't really know much. Don't really see a pro to Spotify as of now. And also, there's the factor of having multiple multiple musical sources. I'm not going to ignore it because I know it's coming. Yeah, I do know about Tidal. I don't really have a push or press towards or against Tidal. Tidal is the option or the way of supporting black-owned business. I get that as well. My personal preference, I just have never really had the heavy push with Tidal. So I'll give you a bit of an educational story. I think I may have mentioned this on my podcast when talking about the Jay-Z album. A lot of people don't recall or may have forgotten that when Jay-Z released his Magna Carta Holy Grail album, it was affiliated with Samsung, who he was involved with at that time. Samsung's music flow kind of changed up a little bit from then up until now, because you kind of try something and if it works, you go for it and then see what happens. The biggest example that I can think of with them that a lot of people may have forgotten about was Samsung Milk. Samsung Milk was kind of like your way of radio. It was kind of giving you like the radio knob option of, okay, I have pop, I have R&B. Let me see what's in between pop and R&B that I may like to listen to. I was kind of lazy. Most times I would just kind of pick what I actually wanted to hear by just looking at all the playlists and kind of let playlists get generated that way. Like I said, Apple Music's biggest push for me is you don't get as many commercials. It's kind of like having a mobile version of XM radio or Sirius radio, whichever one they decide to be called. And if they're apart, then my bad. But I just, my main reason for doing this is, like I said, to give you my personal review of Apple Music. Do I like it? Yes. Is it for everyone? No. I have been told and I have been made aware. I personally haven't had the experience because I don't have an Android. But Apple Music is not the greatest of features for users with Android devices. I know on Windows it works fine. The iTunes flow or iTunes flow for Apple Music was kind of cut and dry on there, so not much really changed. So that's kind of my way of reviewing and looking at it overall. I know it's like, well, why did you spend 17 minutes just explaining to us that it's a good program, you just can't use it on Android? Well, it's not the best. It's still buggy on Android. That's the best thing. But to answer that last question, I got to give y'all some type of content and give you a reason to stay around to listen to the whole podcast. So if you made it this far, then I've done my job. And of course, there's my outro. So by the way, if any of you are listening or have been listening, if you've heard the intro and heard the outro, please give feedback. I know a lot of people, say that they don't like feedback. I prefer feedback. It makes me better at what I do with my craft. Because at first, as I've mentioned numerous times, it kind of was, okay, I'm just doing it just to be doing it. Now I'm getting a better flow with things, and I'm possibly going to mention some of those changes along the way as well. So that's what I'm going to leave you with tonight or today. I don't know why I'm forgetting that I'm doing this like super early, just to kind of make sure that I have the show prepped and ready to go. But I do thank you all for tuning in. If you're not following social media, as is mentioned in the intro or the outro, I believe, please check those out. And any comments or any feedback, bring it. I'm not a hard person to deal with when it comes to things like that, because that's what makes us better at what we do. And before I continue, I have one final announcement. My twin did share with me that she is not, and before I say it like it's the worst thing in the world, I'm gonna be Brian and be transparent, because y'all know me. She did mention, because I know we normally do the By me doing my podcast every day in August, she would be doing her blog every day in August. Well, in this circumstance, which I fully understand because it's a logical, realistic standpoint, doing 2 blogs and trying to maintain 2 blogs for the entire month is a tall order. So to do one every single day, that's a huge hit. So the advantage to it for her now, and I'm just glad for her because now she's gotten it down to the science. And I think doing the blogs in April helped out because it gives you that lesson of that teaching of, okay, I'm gonna record, I'm gonna write this down, I'm gonna save it, and I'm gonna cue it for this day at this time. So that way, when that day arrives, I don't have to look all over the place and try to figure out why it never got posted. It just kind of posts on its own, and automation tools are everything. If you're able to get the right automation tools to do what you're expecting it to do, use it, make it yours, and roll with it. So it's supposed to have ended about a minute or 2 ago, but I'm glad you all tuned in. Glad that the show is still rolling. Episode 95 has been a success. I will be working to make sure I implement the numbers of the episodes so I can refer to previous episodes as well for you all as listeners, because stating, yeah, if you go back to 12/2/16, you'll be like, 12/2/16, what do you mean? So it's coming together, y'all. Y'all know it takes a while for me to do things. So I'll leave you all there. Until next time, Past Podcast signing out. Peace. Another show is finished. Another thought's been shared. Hopefully you all enjoyed. You might have learned something new. Maybe something you already know. But regardless, you made it this far. So I'm glad you tuned in. Until next time, Past Podcast signing out.